The recent patches in Call of Dragons have made significant changes to the meta, and so in this video I'm gonna go over what are now the best 5 marches to use in the open field for most accounts in Call of Dragons, as well as highlight some of other combinations that are possible and which heroes are worth investing in at this time in preparation for home kingdoms. Hey everyone, Zoraz here from Not Casuals. So we'll go right into it now. Of course, there have been a lot of changes recently with heroes. Of course, the release of a new hero like Zayda is a massive game changer because she is so damn strong, as well as her counterpart, which is Maggrat. Now, on top of that, Infantry has gotten a huge buff in the last patch. And even if those of you have seen my last video, Bertrand has been buffed like crazy since his release. So there is a lot to talk about here. So looking at the current best 5 marches, a lot of this will vary depending on if you are a low spender, a whale, and such like that. But in this case, this setup, I would say, is the best setup in the game currently for people who have these heroes at a decent level, if not maxed. Now, keep in mind that the new setup, Zayda and Maggrat should be the primary. I just can't put her primary because she's not leveled up on my account, but she should always be primary because of the talents. And same for Goresh Skogul. Goresh should almost always be the primary, but because I'm still leveling him up, I can't make him have a deputy just yet. But in these cases, you should always have the primary as Goresh and Maggrat in the game for the best talent build. Obviously, otherwise, Syndra and Freygar not any weaker than they've ever been, always as strong, just kind of outshined by this new setup, which is way better. It's actually quite incredible how much power creep there is in how much better these archers are on DPS matter. And obviously the mages, now this has not changed. We have Lilia with Velen, the biggest AoE March in the game, who has the potential for the most merit of any March whatsoever if played properly with a bit of luck and a bit of positioning. And of course the Bertrand Tohar, which has been significantly buffed since before. Now the Bertrand Tohar itself doesn't see a huge difference, but Bertrand himself has a huge buff to him that makes it so that when he casts his ability, the talent that makes him do extra skill damage now triggers his compound interest, meaning that he is always at full stack and he always consumes full stack when he's attacking. And that is something he was able to do with Tohar for the most of the time, but he wasn't able to do it with anyone else, which means that he is now even more strong than he ever was because he is going to have all these stacks for himself, and he can be paired with Aetius or Tia and still have maximum damage. Now, considering how much Infantry has been buffed this season, Tohar with his counter basically, meaning that he's really good attacking Goresh Kogul with all their counter attack. He is going to shine even more this season. So this march itself is able to shred enemies and give you huge amount of merits, almost on the same level as the AoE march, but this march needs to be expertise for it to work at max potential. Bertrand can still be used at 5511, and so can Tohar be at 5151 if you're able to get there, but really they are heroes that get a huge power boost from being awakened, especially Tohar. And then Bertrand has, you know, basically 5551 is I think the minimum because that's first 3 skills are all really good for him, but he does gain a significant amount of damage extra from the last awaken. So this is just things to consider. Now, as I said, this march, Zayda Maggrat, which is obviously going to be Maggrat as primary, she is going to be very powerful because it's a lot of auto attack damage with making all of their increase on normal attack by very high amount. And then you have a huge burst here that goes up to 450%. And then there's some variable healing, which will make you able to last longer in the field. And you only need Maggrat at 5551 for her to do anything good. Like, she doesn't need anything more. She is almost optimal at 5551, so a very low investment compared to a max. But Zayda does need to be pretty much max for her to get advantage of her best stuff. And her awaken is incredibly strong. So this is just things to consider. Also, if you're going to be using a pet, this works because of the healing. But also the Nightrock is very variable and probably better in most situations. But this march is hugely power crept. If you have Zayda max and you have Maggrat at 5551, you will outshine Syndra and Freygar by a huge amount. It's actually pretty unbelievable. And it doesn't mean that Syndra and Freygar is a bad march in any case. Again, they are still an amazing march, and this season has long range warfare again, which means that they are so going to shine just as much as they did before, as they are still able to take down a lot of mages at max range and do an incredible amount of damage with their kits. Now, there is a few things you can do here. Let's say you would like to do this instead. So you could do Syndrian with Zayda this is an actually amazing combo. It's incredibly strong, more than people think, because Zayda is all about boosting normal attack damage and Syndrome is all about attacking more often with normal attack damage. And there's some crit involved here, which is perfect with this skill that Zayda provides, which gains a lot of crit for this March. So they are, in my opinion, one of the best combo in the game. Now, is it better to have Syndrome with Freygar and have Zayda with Maggrat? It is probably a better optimal route to go because you'd have two very, very powerful March. But if you're not an archer main like me, this is one way of doing it if you don't have your Freygar leveled up or max, or if you don't want to invest in Zagrat. And this also can be Zagrat instead of Zayda. It doesn't really matter. Syndrome kind of goes with both of them because they're both attack damage focused, just like him. So you can play around here with the new heroes. And of course, the Kenara Nico March, often underwhelming in people's mind, just because Nico is going from basically meh as a hero to absolutely insane once he gets his awaken. So if you can awaken him, this Kenara Nico March is almost just as good as a Syndrome Freygar, and sometimes even better in a 1v1 situation because of the insane amount of stuff related to damage defense break. So there's defense break stuff on the awakening of Kenara. You have the Snow Peak Rock that works perfectly with that. You also get the Rattle Spear that gives you extra defense break, defense penetration basically, which is really, really powerful. And then you have this, that every time you do a normal attack on a target who has a defense break, they have 80% chance to take 200 damage. Now, 200 damage might not seem like a lot, but if you're doing it on basically 4 out of 5 normal attacks, because with this March, you will have defense break on the enemy at all times. So basically every second, it's like an extra 200 physical damage. It's a lot of extra damage. It's a very, very powerful ability. And it's on an enemies has defense that are obviously lowered from the defense break, which means they are taking even more damage. And they do both huge amount of skill damage and they debuff the enemy. So they are a very, very powerful March. And especially with the long range warfare. Now, this is obviously a setup that is taking into account that you are playing with long range warfare. It is a must if you want to be using archers with the way that it is, because everybody's picking long range warfare, which means if you have something that doesn't have long range warfare, they stick out in the field and they get instantly blown up. So you don't have a choice. You don't have to play archers, but if you don't have long range warfare, you won't do much with them in any case. So this takes into account the fact that we have long range warfare and takes into account that you would have most of these heroes max to be usable, but in many situations like me, I'm pretty close to max and I'm not a huge spender. Obviously, they are still usable without being max, especially the mages. They do very, very good with their first skill max. But it's just, this is the optimal build in the game, in my opinion. And then the Goresh Kogel, I made a full video about why they're so OP. They basically take 40% less damage than they used to. They're insanely powerful. Infantry are so much tankier now than they ever been. And them taking less damage means they have so much more time to do counterattack damage. They gain so much merit. You'll send a march of these maxed out into the enemies and you'll gain 30,000 merit reports without doing anything, any effort whatsoever. And you can make that more optimal by controlling it and making sure you don't get too swarmed. So a very, very powerful march. Venomous Lizard is obviously a choice. Otherwise, the Brune Bear is very, very good for this march. So this is amazing. And obviously artifact wise, you also can go for the artifact that my Goresh has, which is the Spiritborn Torque. So he's basically, he has the right stuff for when he's going to be the primary, which is not very long now. So yeah, this is, in my opinion, the best setup you can do, whether it's Kenara Nico or whether it's these two archers. There's many ways of doing it. And if you also don't want to play mage whatsoever, you can also have the Kenara Nico here on top of it, or, you know, Kenara Husk and then Nico someone else. You could do 4 archer marches. They're so powerful right now, it doesn't really matter. They would do well. But the infantry being so important is because, especially, there's so many archers now, they're so strong. But they do get wrecked by this kind of infantry tanky counterattack march. So this is why you always want an infantry march, and they're just so tanky and so good now that everybody must have infantry. It's just so important. So in my opinion, this is one of the best setups you can have. There's a few alternatives, but not everybody wants to play long range warfare, including me sometimes. Obviously, my archers, they're not at a state that I can really play them. As you can see, my Syndrome is 5-2-1-1 and my Zayda is not very leveled. So not because they're new and they're strong that you have to use them. You can, as I said, there's many ways of making mixes with them that work well, but you can also just basically go triple mages and ignore the archers because you don't really need them, and you don't really have enough troops unless you're well to go with 4 or 5 marches. Anyways, you will run out of troops to fill those marches, so you should focus on 2 to 3 marches. So an infantry march, 2 or 3 mage marches, or 2 or 3 archer marches, or 1 or 2 mages and 1 or 2 archers. Those are kind of the ways you want to do it. If you're long range warfare, you're able to have your archers and your mages in the same ball and attack enemies at a very efficient pace. So this is one way of doing it. But in any case, this triple march threat is absolutely amazing. I ran with them all season last season and I was T4 and I still managed to get almost 8 to 9 million merits with them alone. And it is actually pretty incredible how strong all these marches are. This is obviously a huge nuke single target march. And then Lilia with Tia is actually very, very powerful. Tia does boost the hero skill damage, does make her more tanky. It works in every way. And then this Walder Velen, people sometimes underestimate how good it is. I have had better reports with Walder Velen than I've had with these other two marches at many times, just because of how strong the slow and the AoE is. So this is something to keep in mind. In my opinion, these are the best way to run 3 mages, and they are the best mage you can have in the game. So this is just a quick video update about what I think is going to be best for this season with the buffs coming. Home Kingdom will bring even more changes and more balance fixes. If long range warfare ever goes out of the game, it will also change meta drastically. Mages are currently very powerful, but they would be way more powerful if long range warfare didn't exist. As OP as the new archers are, they're not counter-attack focused, so the range is really what's carrying them, in my opinion. With the long range warfare, it makes them way better than they really should be. But that's also why I recommend Infantry now, because Infantry is way better than it also was or should be, and will counter archers quite dramatically. They will attack you, they will kill you, but you will be gaining as much, if not more merit than they are in many cases. Let me know what you think about these marches this season. Is this something that you are running? Do you have any other opinion or the other marches? Make sure to share in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.